I am back in the man cave, the nerdiest cave on YouTube. And now, since I am back, I was checking on my K40 Laser to see how he is doing. And sure, some screws are still missing, the high voltage power supply still makes dangerous hissing noises, and the cooling broth still looks like something you would only see and smell in a sewer. So perfect for today's project. And that is a little bit more complex. I will show you how I built this bathymetric map, including links and tweaks, how to gather the required topographic data, and how to process them caveman style in Corel Draw. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would give this project an 8, as it requires some advanced knowledge of Corel Draw and Photoshop. So as for in my case, besides a K40 unit, a bandsaw, and optionally an airbrush, a complete list of tools and materials, so as the links, of course, are in the description below. So let's get started with the most complex part, creating the layout for this piece. Now, to get started, we need several things. Of course, we need a map and we need data. We need the data of the ocean depth surrounding an island or whatever spot you want to choose. In the jargon, I think it's called bathymetric data. So it's the same thing as topographic, but it's underneath the ocean surface. So it shows you the depth of certain spots in the world. I found this site scribblemaps.com that comes in pretty handy. You make a free trial account. It's an awesome site. You can do awesome stuff with it. So you can also buy you a subscription, of course, and use the full palette of their functions. In my case, as I just need one picture, I go ahead and with the free trial. Also, this is not unique to that site, what I need to do, so I could basically also use another site, a different site, and use that. Now, this works as same as Google Maps, so you have your card, and you can zoom in, and in my case, I want to go ahead with the island of Key West, down in the Florida Keys, so I zoom into that island. Now, we have the island, but of course, we need to remove everything that is not necessarily useful in our case. So we need to remove the street names and all of that. So down here, we go and click on Custom, and we have this little menu that shows up. So for labelings, we don't need any labels at all. So we undo all these. Geometry, we of course need the roads because it's supposed to be a map. We will add some street names later, but we do that after we vectorized the whole thing. So for now, I just need the roads, the water. We don't need anything else. We just need that. And here we have some colors, and that comes in quite handy because when we invert this, you see that we have a nice dark contrasted map. So this will be pretty easy to cut out or to vectorize. Now, when we close this and we would export this, it of course gives us watermarks because in my case I'm just running a demo or a trial version. And also the resolution isn't high enough because we have to vectorize all those little streets. So what I do is, or what I did is, I zoomed in and took some screenshots. For example, this one, I pressed the screenshot button on my keyboard and I imported that to Photoshop or to Corel Draw. And then I go ahead and I did the next one, and then I stitched all this together, multiple pictures to have a quite high resolution of this island and the street map. Now, when I go ahead here and I go to Corel Draw, you see this is the finished result. So I stitched this together out of like 7 or 8 different screenshots. So we have a quite nice resolution here to work with. Now we have our full resolution picture here, and if you have seen my videos I made about Corel Draw, how to vectorize something, you can check them out if you don't know what I'm doing. Quick and easy, you have your bitmap, or this is in this case a JPEG. I click with the right mouse button on it and I go to Trace Bitmap. Now we can scroll around here. Maybe we go ahead and zoom out a little so we have more overview of what we're doing. Okay, so in my case 10 will be not enough. Just for an example, when I click this it will calculate and it will start vectorize this thing. And here we have, what do we have? How does that look? See, we have a lot of data here, so it takes a while, but you see this is not going to work, so we have to crank this up. Let's say we go ahead and go with 50. Okay, 50 gets a little better, but you still see that all this is bent. Let's go ahead and go with 60. Now 60 seems to be not too bad. So let's see, let's scroll around a little just to see if everything is there. And you see all those lines look a little bit more organic as they are traced now. And I actually like this because it looks a little bit more like hand-drawn. Okay, so I think I will stick with 60 here. So I go to save the trace result. Now I go to Corel Draw. I delete this. And I open my file again. Now as it is vectorized, we can simply open it. We don't have to import it. Trace result map. Okay, so this is vectorized now. And what we want to do is we need to separate this now. We need to separate the contours, everything we want to cut out from everything we want to engrave. Now in my case, what I want is I need the background to be removed and some of these sea level holes here. So I will select the whole thing, I click with the right mouse button, I go to ungroup, so everything becomes a single layer again. And now I deselect everything, and now I start by holding down the shift key by selecting everything I want to be cut out later on. Okay, so I selected everything that is blue. Now we can pull this over to the right just to separate this. So we create our cutting layer. Alright, you see here there is some water missing. I left that out because my map actually will cut off right here or right there, so we don't need this. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Now, first thing we're gonna do is we have to group this. So I select everything, I group this, I do the same thing here, I select it, right click, group. Now I go ahead on our translucent color, I call it, click left, click right, just to be sure, and then I go ahead to black and I click with the right mouse button and we just get the outlines. Do the same thing here, click left and right on the transparent, and then with the right mouse button on the black color, and we have our outlines of our streets. That's exactly what we want, and we can now, as everything is grouped, we can pull these back together, and we have two layers that will actually match. I will zoom down here to align this back up like this. Okay. Next thing, we need some depth chart data, or bathymetric data, which shows us the fall off of the shore underneath the waterline. And to do that, I found an interesting web page. I must say, honestly, I was looking for this for half a day because I'm not a fisherman, or I don't own a boat, so I don't have any sort of ocean map. Well, you need to pay for that to get those maps. So it was pretty hard to find a site where you can do that for free. And I found one, which is a contour map creator, a pretty awesome webpage, especially for what we are doing here. They ask you for a little donation if you use it. I really recommend of helping these dudes out because it is pretty awesome what they do here, and it is next to 3 or 4 other pages that do similar things. The only one where you have all these options here, where you can do a lot of stuff to actually extract the actual data we really need. Now this grabs the data from Google Earth, which is pretty cool, or Google Maps. Same thing, you can scroll around and you go and have a look what you need. In my case, I have to zoom down to Key West here, southern Florida. Key West, there we go. There we have the island. Alright, and now we need some depth charts here and some contours. Now how this works is you zoom down to your object, you click inside of the map, just click on it with the left mouse button and it will give you this little indicator here. You do that a second time and it will draw a rectangle around the area you want that map to appear. So I will adjust this more or less in width. Okay. Now with this we can go ahead and click on get data, So it gets the data from this area, and you see that we have our shorelines here. Now we can tweak a little on the settings to get what we really want. For now I keep this in meters. We can round this a little. And then you have like 3 different variations here. You can level interval in 5 meter steps. So you see every 5 meter of fall off, it will indicate this by these lines. In my case, what I use is the custom levels, because here you can actually just put in custom levels you want to see. Let's say -1 meter. So everything that is below 1 meter will be displayed here. And you see we have this nice line here. And we can add more to this. So in total I will have 3 layers plus the back layer and the top layer. In that case, let's say we add another one which is -2. And now also you see that the color is changing, which is pretty nice because we can cut this out easily later on. So we can also add another layer, as we have 3 -3. Maybe -3 is a little bit too close. Maybe we go ahead and change this to 4. So 4 meters of fall off in the ocean. And you see it gives us this nice little thing here. We can tweak this. We can make this a little bit smaller. So then it will, the resolution will be a little bit higher. Get data first and then we can redraw this. Okay, so we have a nice fall off line here. Maybe we can swap the green line, which is the -2 meters, to -3 meters. This also looks pretty nice, actually. You always have to think 4-dimensional, I would say. I mean, you know, we will cut this out of wood, so the further away these lines are from each other, the cooler the look will be. Let's try this with -5 meter. This is even nicer, I think, because they're not crossing over somewhere. They're all nice and separate. We have a nice thing here. We have that. That should be fine. Now, to extract these data, we could go ahead and use the actual elevation data and paste it in some sort of software. But as I am improvising, sometimes I simply go ahead, go to change resolution, go to full screen, and I zoom in like this. And now I simply grab a screenshot by pressing the screenshot button on my keyboard. And now, to make things way easier, I suggest you use some version of Photoshop, because Corel Draw is very buggy. It is really, really complicated working with layers in that software, and I really don't recommend it. It is very, very nerve-wracking. So I do this in Photoshop. Now, in Photoshop, for my version here, I go to New, and then Image from Clipboard. You can also go and add a new page and then paste it. Now I have 2 screens, that's why you see a second one here. I zoom in down here, and now what we need to do is we have to trace these lines. And well, of course I would go ahead and use there it is, the Magic Wand tool, to simply click on it. But before we do that, as we may come in some trouble to realign everything later on, what I often do, simply out of safety reasons, is I draw a little rectangle in the corner just to make alignment easier later on. So I just put in a rectangle in the middle of the thing like this. Then I go ahead, I have to select both. I have to merge these 2 layers, so this is one thing. And now I can go ahead with my magic wand and I can start selecting everything that is blue. You can now see that there are some spots where it did not work that well. That's not an issue, because now I click on the right mouse button and we go to grow. Grow just grows our selection a little bit, and you see that now everything blue is selected, including our nice rectangle. Now I go ahead, edit, copy or copy merged, and I paste this. So you see it adds me another layer. So now when I click on this eye here, which is like you can make layers invisible or visible. So when I make the background layer invisible, you see our nice selection here with some little neat details. Now I will go ahead and make this one invisible, the one we just cut it out because we don't need that layer. For now, at least. I select the background layer again and I go again. Now, I saw when I was browsing and searching for those pages where you can get these contours from, that different sites have different results. So when I show you here, this one is contours axis maps. So let's try of using some data from this by just taking another screenshot and import this to Photoshop. There is our layer. I put this to the top. So, okay. And now here on the right hand side you see opacity. I set this down and make it halfway translucent so we can match this to the other map we already have. Let's put this layer behind the others and put up the opacity. And now we see here that there are some interesting things going on. So why should we not add these to our layers? Now therefore I need to get more contrast in that picture, so I will adjust the contrast and the brightness. As far as possible. Okay, and now we can go ahead and select some of these circles. Now go ahead and let's cut them. Let's go to our green layer here and let's add them here. And then I go ahead and select those two layers. These are the ones I just pasted in, and I will merge these two layers together. Now we have all our layers together, including some more or minor details. Now we go ahead and save these. So as you can see here on the right hand side, I can deselect the background, for example. You see our single layers here, and we go ahead and save these one after each other. And that's a thing that won't work with Corel Draw, because when you save a picture now, even these are not selected or visible, it will export the whole thing, and it will be impossible to get these apart. And now again, another bug from Corel Draw: don't save this as a PNG file, because usually I save everything as PNG, but apparently in Corel Draw it will give you errors, especially when tracing it. So I will export this as JPEG. I call it line 1. And now I do the same thing for the second layer. We go back to Corel Draw, and now we go ahead and import our contours here. We need to vectorize these again. So same procedure, select one of them, click right mouse button, trace bitmap, and we come back to our map here, and now we import our vectorized graphics. Now first thing, we have to align these by selecting them, pull them over a little bit so we have more space here, and now our rectangles, or at least what's left from them, come in handy, because we can use them to realign our 3 layers here. Alright, we have our 3 layers aligned with help of from our rectangle here. We have some minor artifacts here that we will get rid of right now. Also, we get rid of the square or the rectangle right now. So for that, let's go ahead. I will show you something very interesting and helpful. When you go to Window up here, you go to Dockers and you go to Object Manager, you see that it gives us some sort of layers here. So we have those 3 objects, our 3 maps. Now when I select the first one and I right click, we can go ahead and ungroup this, and you see now we have all the curves that are inside of this layer. Now when we zoom in here, again as usual, we can go to the left hand side, we go to our shape tool, and now we can start getting rid of these node points here. Okay, so we have our 3 layers here, and now we select all of them. Oops, our 3 layers, and we move them over to our map. Now we have to adjust the size, of course. Let's have a look to the original, which is this here, and we have certain points here. You see that this, for example, the blue line is offshore of this little island. You see that we have this dock, and the blue line crosses the dock. So we can go ahead and align this more or less to this graphic. Alright, so we have our completed thing. We have multiple layers now. The next thing we need the scale of the wood we're gonna use. And for me, I bought a pack of plywood, 4 or 5 pieces that are 210 by 297 millimeters. So I go ahead, select the rectangle tool, and I will draw a rectangle over here, and then I go ahead and put in the size up here. So the width will be 297 and the height will be 210 millimeters. Okay, so this is the actual size of the wood we have. Of course, I want to have a little frame surrounding it, so I will go ahead and this is selected. I will copy this over here. You can also go to edit and copy it, or you use the symbols, and paste it. And now let's say I want to have a 2 centimeter frame per side, so that makes 4 up here and down there. 4, so minus 4 is 50, and minus 4 over here means 170. Alright, we go ahead and select the whole thing and stick it in there. We obviously have to reduce the size a little, which is fine, and we need to do our best to still keep track of the lines and everything. Let's get rid of the actual size of the wood for now, or I will just pull this over here. Of course, I need to get rid of this still, because you see it will be in our frame here. Let's do this right now quickly. I will select it. This was the first layer with of the map with the outlines of Key West. Select this by using the shape tool. Now, as you can see, this box will be inside of our frame, so we have to get rid of it. Therefore, I select this. I go ahead and ungroup this. I simply go ahead and break this curve apart. And I will start to delete this. Now we have our frame, we have our layers, and we need to get our layers inside of this frame here. To do that, there is a pretty simple thing to do. Just select all of the layers, not the frame, of course. And yeah, then we go to Effects, Power Clip, Place Inside Container. And we have this arrow here, and now I click on that container or on the frame, and it puts it inside of the frame. Now we have to rescale this to the actual form. So we go ahead and right click, lock contents to power clip, and then we can move our frame around and position it in the way we need it. And then we go ahead, we have our outside frame, which is the actual wood size. This is about how it looks. Now we can go ahead and add some little details here and there. We can add some street names, we can add maybe the logo or the writing of Key West here, and maybe a little compass in the corner. Alright, my design is finished. I added some names, some street names on the most famous streets of Key West. I added a little Key West sign here, my compass, and now I have a whole bunch of layers that I have to pull apart to be able to modify this to be cutted out with the laser. Of course, you will say, why don't you name each layer here on the right hand side in the object manager? Well, that is simply because my version of Corel Draw 12 is buggy. So when I do that and I save the whole thing, I exit the software and I come back, the names will be gone. So it makes no sense for me to name every layer, unfortunately. Maybe this is different in your version of Corel Draw. So I will now start to pull everything apart and give things names for now. This is my cutting layer. Now the thing is that, as we know, the laser cuts everything that is black, so in that case it would cut around this rectangle here, and it would cut out the rectangle and it would cut out the actual landmass, but separately, because you see there are those lines. So we have to get rid of these in order to keep this a single piece. Now what I do is simply I use the shape tool for that, and I go ahead and select, and I break apart that line here, and I break apart that line here, so we can delete this part we don't need. Okay, I think our 4 layers are finished, so I will copy them over to my laptop and go over to the Mancave and start cutting them out with the K40 laser. Now, after the first try that went out pretty bad, it really burned a lot of wood. I did the same thing a second time and modified a little bit on the graphics. I made those little ways here, the bridges, I made them a little bit wider. Unfortunately, I think this wood I've got is not ideal because the laser has a pretty hard time to penetrate through. So I had so many passes to be made that unfortunately it burned a little bit. I'm pretty sure you could use some acrylic and it will come out almost perfect. The laser seems to work best with acrylic. Wood, sometimes you have more fibers in it, sometimes you have less. Alright, here are my 3 layers, and I will go ahead and simply sand them off a little bit, just to get rid of any burn marks. And so finally I got everything together. Optionally, I framed this piece of wall art, so now it is ready to be hung in the bathroom. So in case the can of room spray is too far away or your smartphone is empty, there is something you can stare at. However, I run into some issues with bugs in Corel Draw in this project, so before you think you made a mistake, my tip is to restart Corel Draw and make sure it's not a simple bug that drives you crazy. Of course, there are elegant ways of processing these topographic data instead of cutting it out with a magic wand, what is comparable of carving a toothpick with a chainsaw. But that's how I do things, so keep this in mind before you start hating. I hope this video was still a bit helpful and you enjoyed, and I see you on the next one. Until then, see ya.